I never imagined planning my wedding would end with discovering my brother and fiancé had betrayed me in the worst possible way. Jessica and I had been together for 4 years, and I believed we were building a life based on trust and commitment. 2 months before our wedding, I came home early from a business trip to surprise her. Instead, I was the one surprised when I found her with my brother Ryan in our bed. The devastation was only beginning. 3 weeks later, Jessica called to tell me she was pregnant with Ryan's child. My family's response stunned me even more than the betrayal. They expected me to work through this as family and eventually forgive them both. Before I share how I rebuilt my life after telling them exactly where they could go, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and hit subscribe if you believe that sometimes cutting toxic family ties is the only path to healing. Growing up in the suburbs of Denver, the Mitchell family appeared picture-perfect from the outside. Successful father, devoted mother, and 2 sons who excelled in sports and academics. Behind our home's carefully maintained facade, however, lay a troubling dynamic that would eventually destroy the foundation of trust families should provide. My father, William Mitchell, built a successful dental practice through relentless work ethic and charm. His professional reputation for perfection extended to expectations at home, where appearances always trumped authenticity. My mother, Catherine, a former high school English teacher, abandoned her career to support his practice and manage our household with meticulous attention to social standing. The Mitchell name means something in this community, my father would remind us whenever behavior threatened to disrupt our polished family image. Never forget you represent all of us. As the firstborn, I absorbed these lessons about reputation and responsibility deeply. Ryan, arriving 3 years after me, received significantly different treatment. Where my academic achievements and athletic efforts measured approval contingent on continued performance, Ryan's charm and sociability garnered effusive praise regardless of actual accomplishment. James always does well. But Ryan has that special something, my mother would tell her friends within my hearing. People are just naturally drawn to him. This pattern established early. I worked diligently for conditional acceptance, while Ryan received unconditional adoration despite numerous mistakes that required family intervention. When he wrecked his car after drinking at 16, my parents focused on keeping it quiet rather than addressing the behavior. When he failed 3 classes, his senior year jeopardizing graduation, my father made donations to secure special consideration. "Your brother just needs more support," my mother explained when I questioned this double standard. "You have always been the responsible one." Despite these dynamics, Ryan and I maintained what I believed was a close relationship. As children, I protected him from neighborhood bullies and helped with homework. As teenagers, I covered for occasional missteps and offered guidance he appeared to value. I genuinely believed our bond transcended the preferential treatment he received. After graduating with my business degree, I secured a position with a financial services firm in Denver, allowing me to remain close to family while establishing independence. Ryan's path proved less structured. He abandoned 3 different college programs before working sporadically in sales positions that never lasted more than a few months. My parents subsidized his apartment and expenses during these transitional periods. I met Jessica Clark during this time at a charity fundraiser my firm sponsored. With chestnut hair, engaging green eyes, and a warm laugh, she immediately captured my attention. Beyond physical attraction, her ambition as a pharmaceutical sales representative and compassionate volunteer work with animal rescues suggested compatibility with my values. Our relationship progressed naturally from coffee dates to weekend trips to meeting each other's families. Jessica charmed my parents immediately, particularly my mother, who appreciated her social grace and career focus. "She complements you perfectly," my mother observed after their first meeting. "Smart but not intimidating. Ambitious but not aggressive." Ryan's initial reaction to Jessica seemed appropriately brotherly, teasing jokes and protective warnings about my workaholic tendencies. If his attention occasionally lingered too long or his compliments seemed overly personal, I dismissed any concerns as hypersensitivity on my part. "Your brother is such a character," Jessica would say after family gatherings. "I can see why everyone finds him so charming." After 2 years together, I proposed during a weekend in Aspen, presenting my grandmother's restored vintage engagement ring. Jessica's enthusiastic acceptance and tearful call to her parents confirmed I had made the right decision. We set the wedding date for 18 months later, giving us time to save for both the ceremony and a down payment on a house. During this engagement period, we settled into comfortable routines. Jessica's work involved regular overnight trips throughout Colorado and neighboring states. My position occasionally required similar travel, though less frequently. We purchased a condominium equidistant between our offices, establishing our first shared home with plans for eventual expansion. My parents embraced wedding planning with characteristic enthusiasm for public celebration. My mother and Jessica spent weekends visiting venues, selecting flowers, and discussing guest lists. My father offered to cover significant portions of the ceremony and reception costs generous contributions that came with implicit expectations about size and presentation. The Mitchell family has a certain standard to maintain, he reminded us during planning discussions. People will expect an appropriate level of celebration. Ryan's role as best man seemed natural, despite my college friend Thomas's surprise when I announced my decision. "I thought you would ask me," Thomas commented when I shared the news. "You and Ryan have always seemed complicated." "He is my brother," I explained, feeling defensive about family loyalty. Despite our differences that bond matters, Ryan appeared genuinely honored by the role, accompanying me to tuxedo fittings and offering to organize the bachelor party. His career had stabilized somewhat with a position at a local car dealership, though my parents still provided occasional financial assistance. "This is going to be amazing," he assured me during wedding preparations. "You and Jess are perfect together. I could not be happier for you both." The months preceding the wedding passed in a whirlwind of preparations, work commitments, and family dynamics. Jessica seemed occasionally stressed by the combination of wedding planning and her increasingly demanding sales territory. My mother's perfectionistic tendencies sometimes created tension during decision-making processes. "Your mother means well, but she can be overwhelming," Jessica confided, after a particularly exhausting venue discussion. "Sometimes I just need space to breathe." I attributed these moments to normal pre-wedding stress and focused on being supportive. When Jessica suggested I take a guy's weekend with college friends 2 months before the wedding, I initially hesitated, given outstanding tasks, but ultimately agreed that decompression might benefit us both. "You deserve some relaxation," she insisted. "I will use the time to finalize some wedding details with your mom." That weekend trip would unknowingly set the stage for discovering the betrayal that would shatter my understanding of family loyalty and love. The fishing cabin in the mountains had spotty cell service at best, which initially seemed perfect for a weekend disconnected from wedding planning and work responsibilities. Thomas, Mike, and I spent 2 days catching up, fishing, and enjoying the simplicity of male friendship without complications. Sunday morning, however, brought an unexpected development when my regional manager called the cabin's landline with an urgent client situation. "I hate to cut your weekend short," he apologized, "but the Henderson account is threatening to walk if we cannot address their concerns immediately." After quick goodbyes to my disappointed friends, I drove the 3 hours back to Denver, arriving home mid-afternoon Sunday instead of late evening as planned. The parking lot of our condominium complex revealed Ryan's distinctive red Mustang parked 2 spaces from our assigned spot. This seemed unusual but not alarming. Perhaps he had stopped by to discuss bachelor party details with Jessica while I was away. Using my key to enter quietly, I intended to surprise Jessica with my early return. The living room showed signs of activity. 2 wine glasses on the coffee table, music playing softly from the bedroom. Moving toward the sound, I heard muffled voices and laughter I instantly recognized. Something in their tone stopped me cold in the hallway, an instinctive recognition preceding conscious understanding. The partially open bedroom door revealed what my mind initially refused to process. Jessica and Ryan entangled in our bed, their intimacy clearly practiced rather than spontaneous. For several heartbeats, I stood frozen, the scene simultaneously surreal and devastatingly clear. When I pushed the door fully open, their panicked separation confirmed this was no misunderstanding. Jessica clutched sheets to cover herself, eyes wide with shock, rather than the shame that would have indicated this was a first occurrence. Ryan recovered more quickly, reaching for scattered clothing with practiced efficiency. James, this is not what it looks like. Jessica began with the most cliched line imaginable. Really? Because it looks exactly like my fiancé and my brother having sex in our bed while I am supposed to be out of town. My voice sounded distant, oddly calm, despite the thundering in my chest. Ryan attempted his characteristic charm, the same approach that had extracted him from countless previous transgressions. Brother, we need to talk about this rationally. There are extenuating circumstances you do not understand. Get out. The words emerged with quiet finality. Both of you get dressed and get out. Now. Jessica began crying the tears that had always softened my resolve in past disagreements. Please, James, we need to talk about this. It is not as simple as, you have 15 minutes to pack essential items and leave. Anything remaining I will have shipped to wherever you specify. The engagement is over. Their attempts at explanation blended into white noise as I walked to the kitchen, methodically poured myself a glass of water, and called Thomas. I need you to come over, I said, when he answered. No questions right now, just come. Within the specified 15 minutes, Jessica had packed 2 suitcases while alternating between tearful apologies and attempts to explain a situation with no possible justification. Ryan hovered nearby, uncharacteristically silent after his initial attempts at manipulation failed. Thomas arrived as they were leaving, taking in the situation with a single glance. Jesus Christ, he muttered. As Ryan led Jessica to his car, her engagement ring left on the kitchen counter beside a hastily written note. I had no intention of reading. The following days passed in a haze of practical arrangements. I notified immediate family members that the wedding was canceled without providing details, asked Thomas to contact the venue and vendors about cancellation policies, and arranged for a week of emergency leave from work. My parents' initial calls went unanswered as I processed the dual betrayal in private. 3 weeks after discovery came the second devastating revelation. Jessica called repeatedly until I finally answered her voice, hesitant, as she delivered news that completed the destruction of my former life. I am pregnant, she stated simply. The timing. It has to be Ryan's. The calculated certainty in her voice confirmed another suspicion. Their affair had not been a single moment of weakness, but an ongoing betrayal, spanning months. The pregnancy timing aligned with periods when I had been traveling for work, their opportunity for intimacy planned rather than spontaneous. My silence prompted her continued explanation. We never meant for this to happen, James. It just evolved between us. Ryan and I have decided to face this together, but we wanted you to hear it from us, rather than someone else. How considerate of you both, I finally responded, the sarcasm barely masking raw pain. Goodbye, Jessica. I ended the call and blocked her number immediately afterward. The inevitable family confrontation occurred that weekend when my parents insisted on a family dinner to discuss this unfortunate situation. Their carefully neutral phrasing suggested they already knew more than they acknowledged. My suspicion was confirmed upon arrival at their home when Ryan's car appeared in the driveway. My mother opened the door with a practiced, sympathetic expression. James, thank you for coming. We need to address this as a family. The living room tableau awaited. My father in his customary armchair, Ryan, sitting tensely on the sofa, and Jessica perched uncomfortably in the corner chair, hands protectively covering her still flat stomach. What exactly is this? I asked, remaining standing near the doorway. Please sit down, son. My father began in the authoritative tone he used for difficult patient consultations. This situation is certainly challenging, but family must come together in times of crisis. The carefully selected wording revealed volumes. Not betrayal or infidelity, but situation and crisis. Neutral terms that distributed responsibility equally rather than acknowledging specific wrongdoing. You knew, I stated, looking directly at my mother. Her flickering gaze confirmed my suspicion. How long have you known about them? That is not relevant right now, my father interjected. What matters is finding a path forward that preserves this family. Ryan finally spoke his tone, lacking his usual confidence. James, I know this seems impossible to forgive right now, but with the baby coming, we need to find some way to coexist. We are still brothers. Jessica added tearfully. No one planned for this to happen. The baby deserves to have its family whole, not torn apart by resentment. The calculated manipulation behind their coordinated approach ignited something beyond my initial shock and pain. They expected me to forgive the unforgivable, to sacrifice my dignity for family harmony that had always required my compliance rather than their accountability. Let me understand this correctly, I said, looking at each of them in turn. My brother and fiancé betrayed me, repeatedly conceived a child through their affair, and now you all expect me to sweep this under the rug for the sake of family appearances. My father straightened in his chair. No one is suggesting forgetting what happened, James. But forgiveness is essential for moving forward. Ryan and Jessica made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting an appointment or sending an inappropriate text, I interrupted. Carrying on an affair for months, betraying your brother and fiancé, and conceiving a child is a series of deliberate choices. And now you are making another choice by prioritizing their comfort over the harm they caused. They are going to be parents, my mother interjected. That changes everything. This child will be your niece or nephew, our grandchild. Family obligations must take precedence over personal grievances. The word grievances, as if my shattered trust and betrayed love were minor complaints, clarified everything. This family system had always protected Ryan at my expense. This situation, however, devastating, was simply another iteration of the same pattern. I want to be absolutely clear, I stated, still standing while they remained seated. I will not be manipulated into forgiveness to maintain family appearances. I will not attend holidays pretending we are one big happy family. I will not be uncle to this child, or brother to Ryan, or son to parents who value family image over basic human decency. My father rose face, flushing with anger. You are overreacting. Family forgives. Family stays together despite difficulties. This family has always demanded my forgiveness while requiring nothing from him, I replied, nodding toward Ryan. That ends today. I turned to leave when my mother's desperate plea stopped me momentarily. James, please, what will people think if you abandon your family this way? The question, so perfectly encapsulating their priorities, deserved a response. I turned back, one final time. They will think I finally developed enough self-respect to walk away from people who never deserved my loyalty. Goodbye. My father's shouts followed me to the door. Threats about family legacy, inheritance and reputation that had once held power, but now sounded hollow. My mother's tears, Ryan's belated apologies, Jessica's plea to consider the innocent child, all washed over me without penetrating the clarity that had finally emerged from betrayal. The decision to rebuild my life elsewhere came naturally afterward. Denver held too many memories, too many potential encounters, with a family determined to pressure me into their version of reconciliation. Within 3 weeks, I had secured a transfer to my company's Seattle office, listed my condominium for sale, and prepared for a cross-country move that represented not just geographical distance, but emotional severance. The family messages continued relentlessly. My mother's emotional appeals, my father's increasingly frustrated demands, Ryan's self-centered apologies that centered his feelings rather than my pain. Jessica's communications shifted from apology to resentment when forgiveness was not immediately forthcoming, revealing the entitlement that had enabled their betrayal. Extended family members and shared friends became unwitting messengers, approaching with careful expressions and phrases, like there are two sides to every story, and blood is thicker than water. Each interaction reinforced the rightness of my decision to create distance. The day before my departure for Seattle, Thomas helped load the final boxes into the moving truck. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, as we surveyed the empty condominium. "Completely cutting ties with everyone. I am not cutting ties with everyone," I clarified. "Just with people who betrayed me and those who expect me to pretend it never happened." Thomas nodded slowly. "Well, Seattle has good fishing. I expect an invitation once you are settled." That simple acceptance of my boundaries, no pressure to reconcile, no platitudes about family obligation, confirmed which relationships deserved preservation and which required termination. Seattle welcomed me with persistent rain that matched my emotional state during those first months. The city's gray skies and unfamiliar streets provided appropriate backdrop for grief that ebbed and flowed like Puget Sound tides. My corporate apartment near downtown offered views of water rather than mountains, a visual reminder of the distance I had placed between my past and present. Work provided structure when emotional stability wavered. My company's regional office appreciated my experience and work ethic, quickly integrating me into key projects. Colleagues respected the boundaries I established around personal questions, accepting my vague references to family complications without pressing for details. My first Thanksgiving alone prompted multiple messages from Denver, my mother's tearful voicemails about empty chairs, my father's clipped invitation that sounded more like summons than request, even Ryan's text, suggesting starting fresh for the holidays. I responded to none, instead accepting a colleague's invitation to her family's celebration where no one knew my history and no emotional landmines awaited. Christmas brought increased pressure, including unexpected arrival of gift packages from my parents and a card with ultrasound images from Jessica and Ryan. These manipulative attempts at connection went directly into the donation bin and recycle container, respectively. Instead of engaging, I volunteered at a community dinner for those without family connections, finding unexpected comfort among strangers who asked nothing beyond passing the gravy. The notifications of my nephew's birth arrived in early spring. Text messages, emails, and social media announcements heralding Ryan Mitchell Jr.'s arrival with expectations of acknowledgement I had no intention of providing. My mother's message proved most revealing. Your new nephew has brought such joy to this family. Perhaps now you can find it in your heart to reconnect with us and meet this innocent child. The implication that a baby's existence obligated me to overlook profound betrayal confirmed the toxicity I had escaped. I blocked the new number she had used to circumvent previous restrictions and continued the process of rebuilding my life on healthier foundations. Seattle gradually transformed from escape location to genuine home. I joined a hiking group that explored Washington's varied landscapes each weekend, developing friendships based on shared experiences rather than obligation. A photography class introduced both new skill and creative outlet for processing emotions too complex for words. 6 months after arrival, I purchased a small house in a neighborhood north of downtown, its covered porch and backyard representing permanence and new beginnings. Painting rooms, installing bookshelves, and creating living space aligned with my preferences became healing rituals that marked independence from family expectations. Dating resumed cautiously in my second year in Seattle. Brief connections with several women helped rebuild trust incrementally, though I remained transparent about my hesitation towards serious commitment. Allison, a marine biologist I met through the hiking group, eventually broke through these careful barriers with patience and authenticity that demanded reciprocal vulnerability. Everyone has scars, she observed during our third dinner together. The question is whether they become excuses for isolation or maps toward deeper connection. Our relationship developed naturally from that foundation of mutual understanding. Her own complex family history, parents who divorced acrimoniously when she was 12, created space for discussing difficult dynamics without judgment. When I finally shared my complete story one evening, overlooking the sound, her response cemented the rightness of our connection. Your family did not just betray your trust, she observed thoughtfully. They betrayed their own integrity and then expected you to help them pretend otherwise. Walking away was self-preservation, not abandonment. Those words articulated what I had struggled to explain to well-meaning friends who encouraged reconciliation. The issue had never been my inability to forgive, but their refusal to acknowledge the fundamental breach that made authentic relationship impossible. The family contact attempts eventually decreased from regular intrusions to occasional commemorations of birthdays and holidays. My mother's messages evolved from emotional manipulation to resigned updates about family events. My father's communications ceased entirely after my explicit request for no further contact. Ryan's sporadic texts alternated between self-pitying complaints about parenting challenges and transparent attempts at nostalgia about our childhood. Jessica disappeared from these communications after the first year, suggesting the relationship that had justified betrayal had proven less enduring than anticipated. Social media glimpses through mutual connections confirmed they had separated before their son's second birthday, their undeniable connection ultimately insufficient for sustainable partnership. This information arrived without the vindication some might expect. Their relationship's failure brought no joy, only confirmation that decisions made through betrayal rarely lead to lasting happiness. The child, my biological nephew, who would grow up never knowing me, remained the innocent consequence of their selfishness, a reality that occasionally brought pangs of sadness despite my resolved boundaries. 3 years after leaving Denver, my life had reconstituted around new priorities and authentic connections. My career had advanced through dedicated performance rather than family connections. My relationship with Allison had deepened into discussion of shared future. My home had become genuine sanctuary rather than showcase for others' approval. The final attempt at forced reconciliation arrived unexpectedly through Thomas, who visited Seattle for a conference. Over dinner, catching up on intervening years, he hesitantly mentioned a recent conversation with my mother. "She asked me to tell you that your father has been diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's," he said carefully. "She thought you might want to know, maybe reconsider your position given the circumstances." The information landed differently than previous manipulation attempts. Health concerns creating genuine pause rather than immediate rejection. Yet the familiar pattern remained visible beneath surface differences. Illness was being leveraged as obligation rather than shared as information between people who respected boundaries. "Thank you for telling me," I responded after consideration. "I appreciate knowing, but my boundaries remain necessary for my well-being." Thomas nodded without judgment. I told her I would pass along the information, but not pressure you. Your decision about engagement is yours alone. That simple respect for autonomy, so consistently absent in family interactions, reinforced the health of distance I had established. Compassion for my father's diagnosis could exist without surrendering the boundaries that protected my hard-won peace. What emerged most clearly through this journey was understanding that forgiveness and reconciliation are separate processes. Forgiveness, the internal release of consuming anger and resentment, became possible through distance and healing. Reconciliation, the restoration of relationship, remained inappropriate given their persistent inability to respect boundaries or acknowledge the gravity of betrayal. 5 years after leaving Denver, the occasional family messages no longer disrupted my equilibrium. The betrayal that had once defined my daily thoughts had receded into background context rather than foreground pain. My engagement to Allison, celebrated with chosen family rather than biological connections, represented commitment founded on mutual respect rather than obligation. The scars remained, as scars do. Certain triggers occasionally resurrected echoes of betrayal, unexpected mentions of infidelity brothers in wedding parties, families pressuring forgiveness without accountability. Yet these moments passed more quickly, leaving less residue on daily experience of joy and connection. What my family never understood was that walking away had never been about punishment but preservation, not of pride, but of fundamental self-worth. Their persistent framing of my boundaries as stubbornness or unforgiving nature revealed their inability to recognize the transformation their actions had necessitated. The brother and son they had betrayed no longer existed, replaced by someone stronger, more discerning, and unwilling to sacrifice authenticity for appearance. The universe contains no obligation to maintain relationship with those who betray fundamental trust, regardless of shared DNA or history. Sometimes healing requires distance boundaries and willingness to build new connections rather than repair irreparably damaged ones. Sometimes family is created through choice rather than biology, its strength measured in mutual respect rather than obligation. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members who betrayed your trust? Did others pressure you to forgive before genuine accountability had occurred? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating complex family dynamics. Consider sharing this video with someone struggling with similar pressures to maintain toxic relationships. Sometimes knowing others have walked this path makes the journey less isolating. Thank you for listening, and remember that prioritizing your well-being is never selfish. It is the foundation upon which all healthy connections must be built.